So welcome. I am so thrilled you're all here today. My name is Joni Parsons. I am the founder of Revel 11. And Revel 11 is all about women and us connecting through powerful conversation, ideas, and fun topics. And we hope that you leave today with an aha moment that might stay with you for a couple of hours or even a couple of weeks. That's my hope. We hold in-person events here in Seattle, online events like this one, and global retreats that focus on women businesses wherever we go, which is so fun. We're going to Sicily, Laura, in the fall, which is so
That sounds
exciting.
fun.
Today we're talking about intuition, and intuition has played a big role in my life. My mom and grandma used to talk about it all the time and referred to it at that time as ESP. And one of my earliest memories of ESP or intuition was I insisted on calling an aunt that we didn't talk to very often, like hardly at all. I'm like, we have to call Della, or what's her name? We have to call Della. And we ended up calling her, my mom and grandma did, and it ended up she was very seriously ill and at home, and that call ultimately saved her life. Now, that's a dramatic example, but it is something, that stood with me for all these years, that you need to listen to that intuitive thought that you have or that gut feeling. And that's why I'm so excited to have Dr. Laura CL here today. Laura is a catalyst for positive change, whether an individual, team, or organization. Her vision is a world where every person connects with their power within them to elevate and expand their consciousness. Doesn't that sound amazing? An expert in human behavior and leadership development, Laura combines her business acumen and her profound understanding of human psychology. Laura is CEO and co-founder of 9Q Solutions, which focuses on leaders ready to align their strategies with their deepest values and purpose. She is currently writing a book on intuition. That's why we're here today also, because many of her clients have experienced greater and quicker shifts by tapping into their intuitive side. Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and welcome to everyone. We're so happy.
Welcome, welcome. From the moment that Laura and I met a couple years ago at a conference, we totally hit it off. And then we started talking about intuition. And I mean, it's like the world started getting bigger and bigger. So before we get started today, what we would like for you to do is to put in the chat, do you utilize your intuition on a daily basis? First question. Second question, what are you interested in learning about intuition today? So if you would put that in the chat right now, that would be great. My big question, Laura, is how do I begin to tune in even more and more deeply into my intuitive side? So, and we will be talking about that. So anybody want to add in the chat here?
And I'll just share as people are thinking about whether or not they want to share and what they want to share. I'm someone who, when I was really little, was incredibly intuitive, and it was very natural. But I learned quickly that some of my understanding was a little scary to people around me. And so I became very good, which I'm imagining some people here with us, I became very good at doing what was expected of me. And so there were many years where the focus, I would say, the focus was on that left brain expression, on that left brain achievement. And it wasn't until my mom died suddenly many years later that I was really broken open more to the intuitive side. So I just like to share that because sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's really good, Laura. Sometimes it does take a monumental shift in one's life to tune in deeper, but a lot of the answers today, like Kelsey says, I try to make decisions based on my gut feel versus that logical side. Yes, I listen to my gut. No, very, very rarely does she. This is Summer. I've learned to tune it out, and most
Yeah, I
out,
hear
yet
you,
it's
Summer.
often right. I mean, all of these are so true. I don't think I use my intuition on a daily basis. I'd like to tap into it more for clarity. So many things that are I do not tune in, and I'm usually devastated at the outcome. You know, I read this quote once that said, and I can't remember who said it, I'll just say that. I'm going to find it. But this person said, I listen to my intuition 95% of the time, and the 5% of the time that I don't, I wish I did. So with that, Laura, I mean, that is such a powerful quote and something that you and I discussed. But let's start by just what is the definition of intuition?
You know, my definition of intuition is a profound knowing without the logical reasoning. And that's where I think someone mentioned on the chat, you know, that fear of not having the data, right? So it's a knowing, and it's a little different. It's a little tricky because sometimes people think it's an emotional, like when we say gut, some people mean intuition, some people mean an emotional response. So it's really important to be mindful about what it is. So it's not an emotional response so much. It's a deep knowing, but without the logical, rational, without the data to back it up.
Without the data. So let's talk about this. I even did some research last night about, you know, the scientific reasoning behind intuition, and there's just not a lot.
There's not a lot, and where they have tried to, so this is the thing that I think is fascinating, because we live in a left brain world, and I was very much a left brain, successfully left brain functioner in the world, right? And the issue with that intuition is we can't really put it in a box. So we have to think when research is being done, a lot of times we have to put parameters on things, right? So there are little peeks into intuition that have a little bit of a scientific basis, but to the level that I'm talking about with my clients, it just doesn't reach it, right?
Yeah.
Like we know that the two sides of our brain function differently. That's one thing, we can measure it. When we're doing something creative, when we're thinking creatively versus when we're language based or when we're working with numbers, we can see the difference in the brain. So there is some research that shows there's a difference between the right brain and the left brain, but it's like little pieces, right? It doesn't really fill up that expanse of what is possible.
And sometimes people think it's really woo-woo, or, you know, it's that sixth sense. But it really isn't. It's just part of who we are as in the human condition and in our human bodies, right?
That's what I'm going for. I will say, you know, it's been fascinating the last 18 months. I've had my private coaching clients where language has been, I've kept my language very left world, right? Really left brain. In the leadership training and the executive coaching that I do, I had my clients started asking for more. Is it okay if I talk about this thing? I can't really describe it. Is it okay if I talk about how I felt? You know, they might use the word intuition, they might use a different word. It started being asked for. And then 6 months ago, I put it out there more openly, and the response has been amazing. So what you described is where we're going. Still, some people have that feeling that is that woo-woo? Is that, what is that? What is it, right? Because if we're used to functioning from the left brain, it doesn't fit into a neat little package the way that, I don't know, learning calculus does.
Yeah. It's just so interesting that in the last 6 months, your clients started asking for this, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
it's
it's
just so.
I'd say it's been about 12 months when they started asking, and 6 months ago I started putting it forward as an offer in how I work, and there's been an unbelievable response, and I would say a lot of very successful men and women, but more women who just know that there's been something else. They couldn't quite put their finger on it. Incredibly successful left brain functioning, and realizing, wow, if I tap into this, what else could be possible?
So why do you think as a society we push this inner knowing away?
I don't know why it started, because I don't think if we go way back, I think this is more
Yeah,
industrial revolution type of
I
stuff.
agreed. Yeah, for sure.
But I believe So I'll speak for myself, and I know that this has resonated with a lot of people that I have spoken with and work with. Uh, it it scares people a little bit because they don't know, they can't put it in, they can't quite put it in that box. They can't quite collect the data, research it, right? So it's a little bit, it's just, it's a little bit scary. And so there's a push to really stay on the observable, right? Because you
Mhm.
can measure it. You can watch it. You can manipulate it and see what, what I'm speaking like psychology experiments, right? Like if you can manipulate things and see what happens. But when you have something that's more intangible, which intuition is in that sphere, it can feel like, well, someone might feel, I don't understand how to tap into my intuition, or I kind of know I have this feeling, but I'm not sure, right? And it doesn't feel like it fits into our world. It's changing. A
It
year
is
from now, if
changing.
we have this conversation, if you're not tapping into your intuition, you're going to be struggling.
Yeah, well, let's make sure we do that. So let's talk more about the left-right brain connection. Can you just like dive in deep into how we can work better with it and what it means in your work when you work with someone and the benefits of both sides?
Yeah, so I like to simplify things, right? And so I'm going to say a few things, and it's not everything. We could speak even more, but if we really just simply look at left brain functioning, is that rational, tangible, it's language based, it's about data, it's about calculations, it's about numbers. It's We all know intuitively, we all know what the left brain is capable of doing. It's very academic based, it's very school based, it's very much based, our reward system in our country especially, but in other countries as well, is very much about rewarding what our left brain skills are, right?
Mhm.
So the right brain's sitting there, and we all know now the people who are really creative, like, musicians and artists, and, they tap into it more. But most of the people I work with are in more like in corporate America, or they're entrepreneurs building businesses, and not necessarily in spending a lot of time in the right brain functioning. But the right brain is that, to me, it's everything that is possible. It's the intangible. It's imagination. It's creation. It's innovation. And when I describe it like that, anyone would say, well, I want more of that, right? Like I want more
Yeah.
imagination. I want more creativity. I want more, and it's where intuition lies. And it's also where emotion is in the right brain. So I saw that someone mentioned something about impulsiveness versus intuition,
Mhm.
and there is a difference between an emotion-based drive to do something. And to tease that out often means going more inward and being super clear inward, and being able to identify the more trained emotional stuff from our earlier years. There is a little difference there. It's not quite intuition. But when we look at, and I say right brain, and honestly, this is like right brain, it's like your heart, it's your soul, if you believe in that. It's kind of this, it doesn't really reside just in that part of your brain. But when you think about what they're both really good at, and some people who start to work with me get a little nervous because they don't want to give up the left brain skills, right?
Mhm.
Got it where they are now. And I'm like, no, you're not letting go of that. You're actually bringing in, you're building the intuition muscle, so that ultimately what you're doing is you're incorporating both, you're integrating both. So if you have a decision, do you want me to give an example of
Yes, please
okay.
give a couple. I think that would
Okay.
be helpful.
Okay, so one example is, okay, I'll give first an example of myself, what happened 6 months ago when I've been functioning again in that left brain world. I've been doing my own growth and expansion in my intuition and the less tangible side of who I am. And it got to a point, partly because my clients were starting to ask for it a year ago,
Mhm.
that I got to a point and I said, I'm not showing up 100% who I am in the work that I can do, because I'm actually limiting this intuitive side of who I am. I'm going to put it out there to my network of amazing women. And I'm just going to, even though I don't have it all figured out with the language, which is left brain, right? So I gave myself permission to not have the left brain have to have it all figured out. And I put just a small post on on a network that I was a part of, and just said, look, I don't know exactly what this is going to be called, but this is this is what I'm feeling. And this is what I'm noticing. And this is what I want to do. I want to bring more of this intuitive work into my executive coaching. And I'd love to, is anyone interested? And I was a little
What
bit,
happened?
my left brain was going, what are you doing? You need to figure this out. You need to get the language right. You need to have it all, you know, all tied up with a bow before you put it out there. And my right brain was saying, I will hold back if I don't just put this out there. And those first few women that I worked with were they brought so much into the work that I do, because they said yes without even knowing what it was. They said yes to the energy. So they were saying yes from an intuitive place. So that's an example. And for me, and it has completely changed. It's completely changed in a way of being more full and richer and more powerful, the work that I do. Right.
And could you give us some examples, Laura, of a client that
Yeah.
has had profound aha moments from this type of work?
Yeah. One of them was, I'm being conscious of what I share. So someone had a really big decision, a work decision, and the left brain was going on overtime, not being able to sleep, really like looking at the pros and cons, like the things that, you know, we talk about that are important to do. And I'm not saying don't do that. But what was happening is there was a spinning going on where it was like, it didn't feel good either direction. Well, she was so much in the left brain trying to figure it out. So what we did in our work together was, and she you know, takes some trust, but we went and I guided her through a visualization. It was partly a shift in her physiology is what, you know, what happened, partly a shift in her emotional and energetic state. And what it did was there were some symbols in the visualization that meant something to her that she took from it. And then after we did the visualization, we went into, well, now what's the left brain having to say about this? Because it's always very fascinating to hear. It doesn't make any sense, right? But if you stay in the energy of being able to hold both the left and the right brain, what she was able to do was she was able to see a clear path forward. And that's, you know, she'd been spinning for quite a while on that. So that's, and I would say that example is pretty common, that where there's something where the left brain is just going, what do I do? The other time, another example that was really powerful is someone who was leaving corporate America, didn't want to go in, well, she was leaving a particular job in corporate America, wasn't sure. So she had a little intuitive sense that maybe she didn't want to do the same thing somewhere else again, but that was scary. Okay, so I think about the left brain. Her left brain was going, oh, but if you don't do that, who knows what you're going to do, right? Like you need to know what it is. And so she knew enough to know that to just go on the autopilot, to just go with what the left brain had presented previously. She just knew there was a little intuitive something that said, I'm not sure. And so she was working with me. And in that was able to, I think the most powerful thing with her was where she saw her choices as, you know, let's just use some numbers for our left brain to be happy. A half a dozen options, right? Which is a huge privilege. Well, that's amazing to have that many options. What happened after our work together is the possibilities became so expanded. And what happened is her energy shifted to not one of being defensive, right? About, oh, I hope I picked the right thing. It was excitement, and it was positive momentum, and now in one session, she didn't make the decision, but what it did was it opened up and was like, oh, whoa, I can, right? Like there are all these possibilities that I didn't see before. So for me, that intuitive piece is opening up what vision is.
So many times we just see a narrow path, and once you sit with it, you be with it, you take a walking meditation, or, whatever it is that you do, which could be over, a period of time, you realize that the world and our lives are really much more expansive than we think they are.
Yeah. And can I comment? There's one comment in here that I feel really pulled to,
Yes, absolutely.
and it has to do about in the world that we live in, and women maybe be more comfortable with this than
Mhm.
men, and living in a more male dominated society, that how men might view it. And I want to share, I have since I since I started saying more explicitly that I include intuition, yes, I have more women, but the men who have said yes to working with me,
Mhm.
they're right there. So
That's
yes,
fantastic.
yes, we're living in a paradigm. I believe we're in a paradigm right now that's in the process of transitioning. Okay. So yes, certain companies, certain organizations, you're going to feel a little hesitant to say it out loud, but you can
Yes,
still practice and
right.
expand inside or on your own, or with people, people in groups where it's safe.
Mhm.
Um, and I get we're in a transition, so we do also need to pay attention to where we are. Just like I didn't come into, a leadership team and, two banks post merger, and so pick up my intuition and say, my intuition is telling me that you don't like
We're not
her
talking
and you
about
can't, like, no.
that. No.
No, but I use the information in the work I
Mhm.
was doing. So
It's so funny because I've because I grew up with this conversation, I don't speak about it very often to many people. I mean, there's a select group of women primarily that I talk about intuition. And even I was talking to my partner last night about, the idea of intuition. He's like, well, that's just, decision making. And it was so funny, but I'm so glad to hear that there are more men coming into this conversation. So one of the things we want to do next, before we tap into telling you how to dive into your own intuition more, is we would like to do a meditation that Laura will put us through for the next several minutes. And so I'm going to turn off my camera here, Laura, and just let you
okay.
take us through this wonderful next step before we talk about more tips. Okay?
Okay. All right. So I just want on the chat, is everyone up for this? Are you willing to just take the next, let's say, 5-6 minutes? Yes. Okay, I got one yes there. To just play in the space, and to know, oh, I love that there's someone, and to just know that you can't do it. Yeah, we got a lot of yeses. Okay. I like to ask, because it's you know, it's not always super comfortable. And one of the things that I like to say, and I want you to hear this, is you can't do it wrong. Your left brain will be communicating with you while we do this. It's going to be a guided visualization. It's going to be very brief. And it's something that you can use whenever you want, after we're done with this, for as long as you want, because you can always create, you can shift it. It doesn't have to stay the same, right? The intention is to feel safe and connected with you in this space. So wherever you are right now, hopefully you're somewhere quiet. I close my eyes. That's how I connect with my intuition, and it is part of what guides me in guiding you in this visualization. So I'm going to close my eyes, and if you, hopefully you are in a comfortable, quiet space, ideally seated and with all notifications turned off. And just start noticing your breath. And I'm just going to look at the time we have. Okay. Just start noticing your breath. And you don't have to do anything, but just notice as you breathe in, how you're breathing in, where in your body you feel it. And as you're breathing out, where do you feel the release? And with the next few breaths, you don't have to do anything fancy. Just lengthen the inhale just a little bit through the nose if that's comfortable. And when you exhale, exhale through your mouth if that's comfortable. And just lengthen that a little bit. So with the next breath in, You're breathing in all that is good and nourishing for you, nourishing to your body, nourishing to your mind, nourishing to your emotional and energetic part of you. And as you exhale, you're exhaling right now anything that doesn't serve you in this time and space. So with the inhale, you're breathing in all that is beautiful and nourishing for you. And exhaling anything that doesn't serve you in this moment. And if your left brain tries to make some comments, just acknowledge it and just let it know you're just going to play in the right brain space for a little bit. Breathing in and breathing out. And now I want you to imagine you in an imaginary space in nature. This can be somewhere you have been before, or it could be entirely made up with your imagination. So breathing in and breathing out, feeling yourself here with me on this Zoom webinar, but also feeling a part of you in this imaginary space in nature and creating it however feels best for you. The key is to see, sense, feel what feels really good to you. And you can change it. If you start off some mountains there and you don't want the mountains there, you can change it. There's no right or wrong way. And with the next few breaths, we're going to touch on a few of the elements in nature. And you're going to tune in as best you can with all your different senses. You're going to see what you see, smell what you smell, touch what you touch, hear what you hear, and just sense, taste if you taste. And I want you to just notice how your body is positioned in this space in nature. Are you walking? Are you laying down in the sand? Are you sitting on a rock? Just notice, knowing that you can't do this wrong. And as you find yourself comfortable somewhere physically, just notice, what do you feel? What are you sitting on a rock? Are you touching the ground? Are you leaning up against a tree? So what do you feel? This is a tangible feeling sensation. And again, it's in your imagination, but you can imagine what it feels like to lean against or even hug a tree or to lay on the grass. And as you feel what you feel from the earth, this is the earth energy connection for you. It might offer clues to you about things you can do throughout your day to connect with this part, and it might not, just might feel good right now. And now tune in to the water element and notice, how does water show up in this sanctuary space in nature for you? Is it a quiet ocean? Is it a stream that's bubbling? Is it a waterfall that's just massively crashing down? Is it little dewdrops on your cheek? However it shows up for you, it's exactly as it's meant to be right now. Just notice it and shift your energy to the fire element. And this might show up as sunshine. It might show up as warmth behind clouds. It might even be a campfire. But just tune into that warmth, knowing that it's part of you creating this safe space in a nature sanctuary for yourself. And now tune your attention to the wind element, just noticing, how does the air move around you? Does it kind of tickle your hair or the back of your neck? Do you see it blowing through trees? Can you feel it almost push you over? However it shows up for you is exactly as it needs to be. And sometimes at this point, the left brain may try to tell you, don't do it this way, do it that way, and just acknowledge that part of you. And just know that we only have another minute or two in this space right now. And this is a time to expand and explore the more intangible part of who you are. So, with the next 2 breaths, I want you to really sync up. You're breathing here with me now in this webinar. Sync that up with your breathing in that nature sanctuary space that you've created. And just breathe in all that is wonderful, beautiful, and nourishing for you in this moment. And exhaling anything and everything that doesn't serve you, knowing you can pick it up later if you want to. And another deep breath in and out. And before we come back and open our eyes, just want you, this is a part of who you are that's playing in this space, and it's always with you. You can do this anytime you want. You can return anytime you want. You can recreate it anytime you want. And just acknowledge that part of you. And see if that part of you has a gift that they want to leave you with today. It might be a word. It might be an object. It might be a phrase. And if nothing comes, just know it wasn't meant to come today. And just letting yourself, whatever the first image, word shows up, letting yourself trust that there's a message in that for you. And before we come back and be conscious in this space, just acknowledge that part of you any way you want, telling them that you'll come back and play in this space and grow in this space. And with the next 2 breaths, in and out, just feel yourself here, sitting here in this webinar with me. And I'm going to open my eyes. And my invitation is that we all hold that energy as much as you can as we continue this conversation, and just play with this, play with this space that incorporates all of who you are. Okay?
Laura, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. You're
You
welcome.
know, and I have to say that it's so rare that we give ourselves even 5 minutes to go within and to give ourselves that type of meditation. So that was beautiful. If you would share in the chat, those listening today, how that was for you, and if you had any message, that would be beautiful. And then next we'll be talking about how to go deeper into intuition. So Laura, it is so relaxing to have that time, Donna. Thank you for that. And it does give your brain some space to slow down. And we're all moving so quickly, Laura, that it's rare that we have this time.
Well, and our left brain can come up with a lot of reasons why we don't have time to do this.
Right.
So my invitation, and I've seen it with myself and all of my clients, is taking the time. And it doesn't have, this isn't the only way. I mean, this is just one way, right? But taking the, tears are pouring.
That's freeing. The words that came to me were light, playful, and
Yeah.
content. That's beautiful, Summer. Thank you for sharing. Kelsey, it was peaceful and a great reminder to myself to be patient. Yes, that's key. Debbie, relaxing and gives my mind and thoughts some peace. Oh, Richard, you're so lovely. My tears are pouring. Joni, please share my haiku with Laura. He sent me a haiku this morning.
Oh,
He's
okay.
so lovely. He's our one man in the
Oh,
group.
nice, nice.
Um,
Well, and I
uh,
want to say something because the left brain will many times, if this isn't something that you practice regularly, whether it's meditation, whether it's visual, whatever it is, there's not one right way. The idea is to connect within. Okay. Yes, I say right brain, but it really is to connect within, because we have a wealth of wisdom, different from knowledge. We have the knowledge, but we have a wealth of wisdom, and the left brain will try to pull us off track. Either tells you don't have time, or that's just a bunch of, oh yeah, it feels good, but therefore what, right? And the invitation is to hold yourself in that space of just acknowledge anything that left brain might say to you about that. For me, it was always, you don't have time for that. You need to get stuff done. You need to get stuff done. Get on
yes.
it, right? Get on the
Get
program.
on it.
But the thing that's cool is, like, if you can hold that and look at what you have in front of you, all of a sudden, I'm not kidding you, what your week looks like will begin to shift, because you are suddenly connected with the real the real priorities, not the externally placed priorities, but the real priorities.
And Laura, giving us ourselves this space and time is the first step. I think the second step, and we've discussed this, is stilling the inner critic. So let's talk about that inner critic and how that plays a role in either helping intuition or deterring it.
And I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone if their left brain did have anything to say to them, right? Part of that, but if you can do that while staying in this space, that's the invitation. Be curious about what the left brain wants to say to you. If you can stay in that state of curiosity, so that's one thing that is very helpful, is to be curious about it. And if what's happening is you're becoming more mindful by you're disconnecting from the autopilot of the left brain critic. So when you disconnect, and there are many different ways of doing it, this is one of the ways. When you disconnect, you can see it more clearly. Right. So one of the ways, if someone's having, especially if someone's having real trouble with even going into any kind of a meditation, visualization, or anything like that, one way that can be helpful, I can just snap out of it to check my surroundings, check my work messages. Oh, it's so
Right. I mean,
common.
it's just, this is so close all the time, isn't it?
And guarantee that if you're doing this, guarantee someone will call you or text you or message you. So, learning about that, learning about turning off notifications is really important. Giving yourself this, even if it's 5 minutes a day, you will save more time. I guarantee it. But one of the things, if someone's really having trouble with that internal critic, is to write down what it's saying. Write it down on one side of a piece of paper. Okay, write it all down. Inner critic can be pretty cruel sometimes, and we don't even realize it. But I want everyone to hear this. It's impacting you physiologically, 100%.
For sure.
And so, hey, write it all out. So then it's external to you. Again, it's just another way to get external. And then write on the other side of the paper, for each one of those, write something that's coming from your internal, your inner knowing, your inner power. It might be something like in the external thing, or the left brain critic might be saying something like, you don't have enough time to deal with this, and what you might write on the other side, and there's not one right answer, but you might write, I have all the time in the world. And if that doesn't feel real to you, then you find something else. Like, right now I have 3 minutes. Right? Like, that's a very tangible thing that sometimes you need to get to that point, because it needs to resonate with you. Left brain might say, what is this nonsense? It's, you've got a big work decision, or you've got a big project to complete. What I would write is something like, when I'm really strong within me, my work is even better. Right? And most people would agree with that. You want it to resonate. So those are a couple of things you can do to challenge that left brain. The other thing I think is just super powerful is expand your right brain, expand the intuition, expand that intangible part of you, because as that grows, then there's more of a balance.
And by expanding, I mean, are those the tools that you would recommend to continue to expand it? Is primarily to be still, to meditate, to give yourself space, to write,
Yeah, all of those.
all of
And
those?
I would say do what works for you and be
Hmm.
curious about it. Now, me, I was hardcore left brain living. And um the reawakening when my mom died, there were just things started happening that didn't make any logical sense. And I was trying to research them. And it got to the point where my left brain, like I didn't even have any choice, right? Like my intuitive side was going, you are not going to escape this again. You got to pay attention. So I was trying so hard. My left brain was trying so hard. But the expanding of it, it needs to fit for you right now. Now, for
Mhm.
me, there is no way in the world that you would have gotten me to meditate for 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day,
Yeah,
even 5 minutes a day 25 years ago. No way. So
no
what I
way.
do, walking meditation. That was my way of, but being in nature. So
Yes.
I used to do a lot of work in a hospital setting with physicians and nursing teams and in really dire situations. And I would sometimes be asked to come and speak to the families of people in the hospital. And one of the things that was very doable, and I share this because no matter what's going on in your life, the disasters that are happening, you always have 1 minute to go outside and connect with nature in your way.
Mhm.
And at this time when I was at the hospital, what that usually was just walk outside, take some deep breaths while feeling the sun on your face, the rain on your face. Okay, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Right. And the same
And
thing with the physicians that I worked with who, their patients were dying. And I was sharing with them that you're going to be able to do better work if you just take 3 mindful breaths before you walk into the
yes.
next room. Right. So that's if someone is at the starting point, start with that, you know?
Right. And I think, I mean, for me personally, I mean, just take the example of my mom died 7 years ago this week, and I walked and walked and walked. It was my morning meditation. And, luckily I have dogs and, so we walked, but, I wouldn't listen to anything. It was just, I would listen to nature. And that is still my routine because it's been so helpful for me in the very busy, go, go, go life that I have, that it is time to tune in and to hear a bird chirp, or, to see new birds coming into, our area, or the blossoms blooming. I just went and picked the last of my tulips in my garden right before this. It's
Uh,
like, it just like, okay, I just,
well, those are all
it's so
really great
important.
examples.
Yeah.
And people who are in big cities, look, you could have a little plant that you tend to.
Hmm.
Like there's all this research about plants thriving when you love them, right?
Yes.
You
And
can
talk
take
to them.
a few minutes, talk to them and tell them like they're awesome, like you're so
Yeah.
beautiful. So I guess what I'm saying is it's doable no matter what's happening, right? It's
And
doable.
so the other thing we wanted to talk about is, how do we continue to awaken these intuitive senses? Those were some, but so we did talk about a creative visualization and or dream recall, and like how that might help as well.
So with dreams, it's really interesting. We all know what it feels like to wake up from a bad dream. Physiologically, we all know that our hearts are racing. We feel, some version of scared, right? So uh, our bodies see that as real, right? Now, we don't have 100% control over always having amazing dreams every night. But trust that if there's something scary, it's giving you some information. That's a whole nother area that I'm not an expert in. I just use it as, is there, just like we did with this part of yourself and the visualization, is there a message for me in this? Right?
Hmm.
Just ask that question. I was on a hike one time in the south of France with my partner, and it felt so magical. And this fox came out of the woods and just stood there in the trail looking at us.
Mhm.
And the question is, like, that's super interesting. Usually they run, right?
Mhm.
What's the message for me in this? And if you start asking that, it's you're cultivating curiosity, right? You're not locked
Mhm.
in to it having to look a certain way, look and be a certain way. Or you can try just, for people who love to journal, if you don't already do this, you can do automatic writing, which is just you just start writing and you don't edit it. So you're practicing writing without editing, and you will get some really interesting things. You might not the first couple times you do it because you probably are still editing. But if you just say, I'm just going to write everything that comes to mind, starting with, this is really stupid. I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't have time to do this. And then all of a sudden, you do it for 4 minutes and something pops up and you're like, huh, haven't thought about that for a while. So the curious stance is really important. Some people love meditating. Like I said, I just started a regular meditation the last month
Mhm.
because I finally was at that place. Um, Drawing. If you're not, look, I never thought of myself as one. I'm going to change my language. I am creative. I never thought of myself as an artist because I had a teacher when I was in second grade who told me I was doing it wrong. And that
Mhm.
shut me down until now. And so now I'm telling myself, just paint. Like, don't worry about it. Just paint, right? Sometimes if we switch to our less dominant hand when we do something, it shifts our brain. So those are just a few, look, go and pick up a book off your bookshelf and just say, what's a message for me today? And open up any book and open up to a page and
It's amazing what happens. So I love this quote. I'm just going to read this a quote that you shared with me. And this definitely, we've been talking about this a lot, but I just want people to think about this one more time as we are starting to close. In a world that emphasizes logic and reasoning, learning to trust your intuition can feel risky. But what if that inner knowing is your greatest untapped resource? What if in this time of major transformation, we are being asked to go within and learn to trust our intuitive wisdom now more than ever? What if this journey leads you to greater purpose, better decisions, and a life that feels more authentically and joyfully yours?
Yeah. And that's the why. That's the why of me writing the book. And it's not as far along as I'd like it to be, but for anyone who's here that wants to know when that does come out, we're going to post a link in a little bit where you can sign up for my mailing list. I want to say something about that because part of as I've expanded in my intuition, I look, when I was a little girl, it was true, but it got shut down and now it's true again. I can feel what's happening in the world. I might not have all the details, but I can feel it. And one thing I know is we're in for a really, it's going to be a little bit of a wild ride if it's not all ready for you. And I say that knowing also that we're transitioning to something better. That's my knowing. Do I know when? No. Do I know exactly what it looks like? No. And one of the things that I do know is we are being asked to go inside. We have lived for a very long time for external rewards, external expectations, external, right? This is happening to me. This is happening to me. This is being asked of me. This is being required of me. This is being expected of me, all of that. I'm not saying that we don't show up as a community. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is what might be possible if we all nurture our inner wisdom along with everything else, then who you're showing up as in that community, whatever your community is, you're able to, I'll use some language that I don't know if everyone's come to, you're able to bring in a higher vibration to that space. And we all know what it feels like to be in a space with people where it's really, really feels heavy, very heavy and like that. And we all know what it feels like to be in a space where it feels
Expansive.
yes, yes. And like, I want more of that. Don't you want more of
Yeah.
that? And so I believe that rather than expecting it to come externally, and expecting anyone else to do that for us, that we need to do that internally and then show up in that spaciousness. And that's where we're going to be able to create what's better. So I just wanted to speak to that.
And I love that so much because living in expansiveness, it feels just so much lighter and joyful and purposeful and and if you here's another kind of like attracts like. It's
Mhm.
you attract certain people that love that type of energy and are willing to give it back to you. And with that, Laura, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge on intuition today. And, as I mentioned, from a very early age, this was a very open conversation in our family. And I hope that more and more people are willing to listen. And maybe if we did listen 95% of the time, how would our world change? How would we change? How would we change as a society if we were always true to ourselves and made decisions based on that inner knowing? So I just want to leave everyone with that today. And thank you again for
Oh,
your time.